Leftists like to debate about revolution and reform. This is an interesting subject. Reform is an easy and safe option, but often the results are unimpressive and subject to reversal. Revolution seems appealing, but it risks failure and potentially an authoritarian backlash that makes progress more difficult than ever. It is risky business. Critiques of reform often say the approach has a track record of failure. Minor gains are achieved and then washed away. Of course, they fail to acknowledge that the record of a revolution is much worse. A handful of blood-soaked dictatorships, most of which have long ago collapsed into oblivion. We don't have socialism. Historically, both reform and revolution have failed, but revolution usually fails in much more violent and spectacular ways. Revolution naturally creates violent and chaotic conditions. The sad reality is that the people who emerge victorious from such conditions are usually morally bankrupt. The chaos and cruelty of a revolution naturally gives rise to the worst people within the socialist movement. These are perfect conditions for the most immoral and ruthless people to rise to the top, because such conditions reward these undesirable traits. The Russian Revolution is a good example of this. Of course, actually carrying out an effective revolution in the modern age is incredibly difficult. State surveillance capabilities have never been so powerful, and modern weaponry, especially air power, presents a major challenge. Back in the day, it was rifles versus rifles. Now, a band of rebels can be turned into red mist by a drone loitering on the horizon before they even see it. Things have changed. The state has access to more information and more powerful weapons than ever before. Nuclear weaponry also complicates things. The chaos and disorder of a revolution risks such weapons falling into the wrong hands. If the government of one of the major nuclear powers was to collapse, this would present a dangerous opportunity for bad actors to acquire control of nuclear weaponry. Revolutions are usually an absolute mess, and when you start a revolution, it can be very hard to predict who will actually take power at the end of it. Look at the Syrian civil war. It may have started with ostensibly liberal protests, but once violence broke out, Islamists started emerging everywhere. The Syrian civil war carries another lesson too. In an increasingly cruel and brutal world, revolution can weaken the state, and other powers may take advantage of this. Israel has taken advantage of the collapse of the Syrian regime. They seized Syrian territory and wiped out the Syrian military. They have been terrorizing Syria with airstrikes ever since. Revolution weakens a state, and other powers may take advantage of this weakness. That factor needs to be taken into account. It is also the case that government legitimacy is a very precious thing. If you destroy the perception of government legitimacy, it can be incredibly difficult to rebuild it. In some circumstances, revolution may be the only answer. An evil dictatorial regime may make such an approach essential. But revolution is a subject that must not be taken lightly. It is an incredibly serious matter, and it presents a huge array of risks. In some situations it may be necessary, but it must also be subject to cautious consideration. It is a massive gamble. At best, it is a lesser evil. At worst, it could make things even worse. And if one does embrace it, they must do all that is possible to mitigate the many risks that are involved.